Hello and welcome to our show today. I'm very excited about our guest. Our show, the title is Your Voice, Your Vote, and the Urgency of Now. I'm Leslie King, the founder of Black and the Bird. I'm glad that you've tuned in. And so if you would like and share this exciting conversation with a local group of civic-minded folks who are part of fraternities and sororities, and also a part of a larger coalition called the Juneteenth Coalition. And so I'm excited to have them all here to share about the work that they're doing in the community. And let me just introduce briefly our guest. So I have Francis Brakefield, who is a member of the Deltas. Ronnie Schultz, many of you know him. Ron Schultz is a member of the Alphas. And Tommy McCune is a member of the AKAs, Alpha Kappa Alpha. And then Bethany Nichols is a member of the Zetas, and Sharon White, also a member of AKA, and Carlos Hutcherson, who is a member of the fraternity Omega Psi Phi. And then we have Philistine Mosley, who is here to talk about the Juneteenth Coalition. So I'm so glad that they all could be with us again. Please like and share this video with your friends, and thank you for tuning in for this very important conversation. So let's get right started with my first question. And that question is for you, Philistine. What is the Juneteenth Coalition? Tell us what the Juneteenth Coalition is.
Okay, Leslie, thank you for having the Juneteenth Coalition and the combined Divine Nine with you today. I'd like to share with you our Juneteenth mission before I get into a brief history of Juneteenth in Lynchburg. We came together to bring all Americans together to celebrate our common bond of freedom through recognition, observance, education, and historical preservation of Juneteenth in America. Our Juneteenth Coalition is made up of fraternities, sororities, interested civic groups, the Legacy Museum, the Old Dominion Lodge number 181, the Revelers Club, CHAP, Lynchburg, and Campbell County NAACP, the Virginia chapter of the Links, Virginia State University, Central Virginia Alumni chapter, and Virginia Union University National Alumni Association. The Youth for Truth group joined us this year. For a quick history of Juneteenth, of course, that it started back in 1863 when President Lincoln did the Emancipation Proclamation to end slavery. And of course, the 1865, the Civil War ended, as well as end of slavery. But in Texas, the enslaved had not heard that they were free. And so that's on June 19th, 1865, they found out they were. So that's just a brief history. But what I'd like to share with you about the local Juneteenth organization is that we have come together to do blood drives, health fairs, and to acknowledge and recognize area high school scholarship recipients through a reception. And we did a beautification and project at Hunton Randolph Community Center, which we built a sidewalk to connect the lower community to Fifth Street. And so that worked out really well. And then our current project, what we're going to talk about today, is the Get Out the Vote activity. But we are now celebrating our 20th anniversary. Juneteenth started in Lynchburg in 2000 with Victoria Reese and Mark Stewart. And they are director and co-directors over at the American Red Cross. And so the American Red Cross sponsored the Juneteenth Coalition from 2000 to 2005. And then their board decided they no longer wanted to do that. So in 2006, we did not have a Juneteenth celebration at the park, but VUL did do a health and safety awareness program, which all the organizations participated. So then the fraternities and sororities decided that we wanted to come together to form the Juneteenth Coalition. So that's how the Juneteenth started, from the American Red Cross bringing it to Lynchburg, and then the coalition starting, then the fraternities and sororities starting it, and then of course I read you the other organizations that were make up the Juneteenth Coalition. In 2003, the local Greek organizations, the Divine Nine, sponsored and built a Habitat Humanity house under the leadership of Omega Fraternity, because they had the contractors. But we built the house, and for our anniversary, for June 19, 2020, we did a virtual celebration activity because of COVID-19. And we collaborated with the Academy of the Arts, Kumba dances, and other community groups to do this virtual Juneteenth celebration. Juneteenth was recognized as from the city of the Lynchburg as a holiday under the leadership of former Mayor Trinae Tweedy. So the workers in Lynchburg got a holiday this year. And what is so terrific is that the Virginia Assembly and Governor Ralph Northam voted Juneteenth, June 19th, as a state holiday. Yes. So now we have joined other states that we now have a state Juneteenth holiday. And that pretty much covers it, unless you have another question about.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that important history with us, Philistine, because I would imagine that there were pieces there that I wasn't aware of, and I'm sure other people who are viewing are not aware of, the depth of work that the Juneteenth Coalition has been involved. And so I appreciate, starting the conversation that way so that people know, more about the purpose and activities and the hard work that goes into putting things together. So you talked about the Divine Nine, and you have a project currently right now that's going on. And I wonder if someone could talk about that project, or just talk about the Divine Nine in general, and who would like to take that?
I'll take that question.
All right, thanks, Tommy.
The Divine Nine, this particular project with the Divine Nine began back on August the 27th of 2020, and it was a combined effort of the historically Black Greek lettered organizations, fraternities and sororities, that were represented on the Juneteenth Coalition of Lynchburg, Virginia. There are 5 fraternities, and they are Alpha Phi Alpha, Kappa Alpha Psi, Iota Phi Theta, Omega Psi Phi, and Phi Beta Sigma. There are 5 sororities, and they are Alpha Kappa Alpha, Delta Sigma Theta, Sigma Gamma Rho, Zeta Phi Beta. Now, our focus is to get out the vote, and collectively, we are called the Divine Nine as we go out into the community to excite, ignite, and encourage the privilege of voting in Central Virginia. So that's who we are, the Divine Nine.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that. So, and it's such an important thing, and it's so much of what has been in the news lately is around voting. So, thank you for your work. So what kinds of things are you doing with this particular project? What have you been doing in the community?
I'll say in this one particular project, and I know someone else is going to speak on that, but we were actually making a statement: get out the vote. We're all in our mask. We're saying that it's important. We are representing who we are, and we just know that it's a very important election and everybody needs to get involved. So we're basically saying, get out the vote.
All right, thank you. So does anyone else want to talk specifically about what you hope to accomplish through this project, or?
Yeah, I can speak on that. As Sister Tommy McCune mentioned, our first initiative is to excite. to ignite and to encourage the privilege of voting in the Central Virginia area. Secondly, our goal is to register as many unregistered citizens in this Central Virginia area to register, get them registered to vote, and then to educate them on the voting process. And that also includes absentee voting, voting by mail, voting at the registrar's office, early voting, which includes curbside voting for handicapped and for senior citizens. But lastly, but most important, is to mobilize those citizens to the poll so that they can exercise their vote. You know, it's wonderful to be registered to vote, but if you don't cast that vote, you just become a registered non-voter.
So, you know, that's a great point. And I wonder, in doing and going out in the community, are people receptive to, you know, your encouragement and the work that you're doing to encourage people to vote?
Oh, the citizens have been exceptionally receptive. They have, we've had very little, almost to no pushback. Very few people that are declining to register to vote.
Oh.
We've had wonderful feedback.
That's great. That's great. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, and I wonder, you know, for you personally, why do you think voting is important? Why is it so important? You know, and why? And when did you realize it was important? Anyone want to share?
For me, voting is important because I recognize that voting is a privilege. Many people fought and bled and died for all of us to have the right to vote. So I always know how important it is for me. Also, for me, in my household, my parents are both very interested in politics. So we always have very hearty political discussions at my house. And we've been doing that like ever since I was a very young girl. And also, my parents would actually take my siblings and I to the polls with them when they would vote. I mean, and I can remember that from the time, you know, I could remember, you know, or comprehend what voting was. I remember my parents taking us to vote with them, and they would actually take us into the booth and they would show us, you know, what a ballot looks like. And then they would tell us, you know, this is, you know, when you get older, this is something that you're going to have to do because it's very important. And they'd even let us, like, you know, check off, you know, whatever it was on the ballot or press the button. And we always got a big kick out of that, my siblings and I. And when we all turned 18 years old, my mother took us all to register to vote because she said, as soon as you turn 18, I don't want one day to pass where you have not registered to vote, because she said, this is very important. And, you know, we cannot let our voices not be heard. We cannot let all of that hard work that our forefathers did, you know, to earn us the right to vote. We cannot let all that work be in vain. And so when we turned 18, all of my siblings and I, my mother took us immediately that day to register to vote. So for me, voting has always been very important, and I never miss an election. I always know whether it's local, whether it's state, whether it's national, I always show up to the polls, and I encourage everyone else to do the same.
Yeah, so it sounds like your parents sowed seeds, right? And in you, in terms of the importance of voting. And I certainly remember my grandparents taking me with them, and also my parents as well. Sharon, did you have something you wanted to say around that, or no?
Well, actually, Ron was speaking about voting and how they had gone into the community. He may not say it about himself, but what I know, being a part of a grassroots organization at Prayer Faith Temple Church, the NAACP, the League of Women Voters, Involved Citizens Unite, Ron and the Alphas went out and they parked themselves at different community centers and they registered. They went out into the community. And I know we were looking to vote, to register about 2,000 people, but I know that he and his fraternity went out into the community and they registered numbers of people. And I just wanted to add that because I know he wouldn't say it by himself.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Maybe Ron's being modest about the work. You know, it's so important. You got to unmute yourself.
I don't mind speaking on that. For the last 4 weekends, 4 Saturdays, we went out and did voter registration drives. We did 2 Saturdays. We were in the Darrington community, and we registered some young people that had never participated in voting before, and they took pride. I mean, they really took pride in registering to vote. And we did that. We did one in the Darrington community by their, I guess, by the apartment, Darrington Apartments. And then the second weekend, we did it at the shopping center that used to be Zips. We registered folks there. But for the last 2 weekends, we were in the Bedford area because we got some data, got some statistics, and we found out there were a lot of unregistered people in the Bedford area. So we spent the last 2 Saturdays in Bedford, and it was just amazing. We registered 4 people that were in their 80s, and one gentleman was 88 years old. And this was his first time registering to vote. And that to me was just huge. That was huge. Another family, the gentleman was 85, and we registered 3 people in that family that day. So it was, we received just as much in registering these people to vote as it was valuable for them to register to vote. So this whole project has been a win-win. It really has.
That's really great to hear. You know, sometimes when you're working on something, you don't always see the return on what you're doing right away, but to be able to see the fruit of your labor in the process has to be encouraging. And, you know, that leads me to my next question about, so why now, right? So the title of our conversation is Your Voice, Your Vote, and the Urgency of Now. What makes this particular presidential election, different from other elections in terms of its importance? Not that other ones were not important, but why do you think this particular one is so important?
Okay, I guess I can take that question. Leslie, thanks for having me. First, I'd like to say, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All elections are important. I think every election is the most important election of your lifetime because it, in a sense, directs the future or where we're going. This one is so important partly because of the person currently occupying the White House, the position. Our agenda, talking about African Americans, have never really been fully addressed by any president. So to imply that this one would cure all ails of our community would be misleading. To say this is important because the Supreme Court seat that's at play could be misleading because the current president's trying to do that now. I would say that this one is so important because it will help set the course of the country going forward. The divisions that we've had or that have come to light, I think those divisions have always been there, but that have come to light is somewhat scary. When it comes to light, the people that you associate with, work with, grew up with, and call your friends are rooting for and supporting a policy that advocates social division, a racist ideology. I think it makes the election very important. If you're a minority or a person of color or non-white or Black American, this election should be very important because it may guide the course of the country during our children's lifetime, for the remainder of our lifetime. Um, and I think it's only important if you care about the future. But if you are content with the way things are and you're content with the direction the country's going, then I don't think it's very important to you. And I would see why it's not important to you.
Well, I appreciate you, speaking to that. And in particular, I think also that there are some issues that are a concern for African Americans and Black folks in this country. One being voting rights, the continued erosion of voting rights and voter suppression. So if we look at particular policies and look at agendas from that and healthcare and other things that are of importance, that there's the potential that they can continue to be eroded depending on the particular platform. And so I appreciate you sharing that. So as you said, that all elections are important, this one is important as well. So I wonder, so do you think there is a disconnect between generations in terms of voting? What are you seeing that that some don't see it as important? And so we know about, our ancestors, and oftentimes we evoke our ancestors' sacrifice so much. And then sometimes what happens is a younger generation will say, well, they sacrificed for us to have a choice, whether to vote or not. And so I wonder, where do you think the disconnect is with either younger generations or for those who don't see voting as important?
Well, Bethany, if you can kind of help me with this question, we talked about it a bit. And thanks again for having me. And actually, I'm representing a grassroots organization as well as Alpha Kappa Alpha, a grassroots organization called Involved Citizens Unite and Voting by Any Means Necessary. Because I sat at home at the beginning of this pandemic, wondering what it was I could do to help people get out and vote. And I have a nephew, actually he's my great nephew, he's 18. And then his mom is on that cusp. She's 39, getting ready to turn 40. And they just don't see voting the same way that us baby boomers. And so I think the disconnect for me is that certain things are important to them now that it wasn't important for us. It's just that now they look at, do I matter to you? Do I matter? Not does the whole of the community matter? And, for us baby boomers, we wouldn't dare not think about voting, especially being a person of color. So we put our hopes into the 18 to 23-year-old bracket as a grassroots organization to get them to understand why it is that we have this commitment to vote, that if I choose not to vote, then I'm saying that I like the way things are going right now. And it's difficult for our younger generation to understand moving forward, and that it's not just about the presidency, it's about senators and Congress people. They're the ones who making decisions, and they're the ones who are setting the, for example, the minimum wage. Congress is up there making all that money. And how much do you make per hour? Well, they have a right to decide what we're going to get minimum wage. So if you care about what type of money you're going to make in life, how are you going to take care of your family on $8 an hour when Congress can change that? So my thing is to help them understand it's not just about the presidency. It's about senators and Congress. So get out and vote for them. But Bethany, what's your take?
Right, because often when we're out, we hear people say, oh, well, my vote doesn't really count. Like, it doesn't really matter. The president is elected by the Electoral College. So if I show up or not, it doesn't really matter. But I always tell them to consider the local and state elections where the winner is chosen by popular vote. So every vote most certainly does count. And any of those of you who follow politics will know that in many of the Virginia House of Delegates races from 2017 and 2019, many of those races came down to less than 20 votes.
Yeah.
I mean, less than 20 votes, that's extremely close. So every vote did matter. And I'm sure that whomever was on the winning side or the losing side wished that there had been more turnout so it wouldn't have been so close. In 2016, I mean, nearly 100 million people did not exercise their right to vote. And to me, that is just unacceptable. Voting is a responsibility. It's the foundational concept of our entire democratic structure. You know, as citizens, we control our destiny, and we cannot be silenced or left out if we continually make our voices heard at the polls. You know, imagine how different the outcome may have been in many races in 2016 if more people showed up to vote. So those are things that I always mention to people who say that their vote does not count.
And we had somebody, Leslie, on our committee, we reached out to different age groups, and the young man said, I don't know if I want to vote. My friend right up there with that black and gold on, his organization, Ron Schultz and the Alphas, have a voteless people is a hopeless people. And so I began to share that with this young man, and I shared that if you want things to stay the same, then you do nothing. And I can't sit back and just do nothing, because I have a responsibility, like Bethany said. What are my nieces and nephews going to say? Well, Aunt Sharon, what did you do in 2020 to help? Well, now I can say we created a grassroots organization. We interviewed with Leslie King so that we could get the word out. We partnered with other organizations to let them know that now is the time, and we must change how things are going. Otherwise, we're going to end up, people always wanted to send us back to Africa. I wasn't born in Africa, but I can go to Africa because I happen to love it, our motherland. But that's not where I was born. I was born in the Americas. And what we also have shared with them is in 1942, people didn't vote then because what were they doing? In World War II. See, our young people don't know about all of that. We have to, it's the Sankofa principle. Reach back so we can move forward. And they've got to know their history before they can actually move anywhere forward.
And I also encourage young people and anyone else, if you don't like the direction that things are going in, suppose you don't particularly care for what your representative is doing, make an appointment and go meet your elected representative.
That's good.
Representative in this area, they've all met me. Like, I've all been to Richmond to visit all of them. You know, remember that these people work for you.
That's right.
Way around. And a lot of organizations and civic groups have advocacy days at the Capitol every year. They're often in February. And I always encourage people to attend these events. You know, meet the people who are making these important decisions that will affect your everyday life.
That's right.
Of, you know, what legislation is being debated and passed and how it's going to impact you directly. And then if all else fails, or, you know, if you so choose, run for office. You know, there's a lot of room, I think, with our current, you know, government, state, whether it be state or federal, for new ideas and fresh faces. So I always encourage people, you know, to make your voice be heard, not only show up at the polls, but, you know, maybe eventually one day you might run for office.
Good.
Yeah, you know, I appreciate your passion, you know, around this. And it really is, as you spoke to, real issue with the disconnect. And it sounds like, based on what you're saying, that, you know, education is important. Connecting voting to real life issues is really important. Connecting with, you know, political leaders, getting to know them, and educating yourself. And in many ways, the younger generation doesn't have necessarily the education that some of you all have when it comes to voting. And so that's an important piece too. And I think also the listening to their concerns, right? Because they're not coming from, they're coming from someplace, right? They have some meaning to them, and where is it coming from? And continue conversation around that to close that gap is so important. So I appreciate you sharing that. So, and you kind of touched on this a little bit. Actually, you all touched on a lot of that around voting and why it's important. So I'm curious, what else should Black people be doing? What should we be doing after the election, right? So does our responsibility stop with this election? What else can we do? Or is that it? Does anyone want to take that one?
Hi, Leslie. This is Francis. I'll take that one. You're absolutely correct. I think Sharon, Carlos, and Bethany has touched a lot on what we're doing and why it is so important. So, does our duty stop after the election? Absolutely not. That's actually when our civic duty starts. We all need to be diligent about holding our candidates that are elected responsible. That means we need to, first of all, know what did they promise you that allowed you to elect them? Then follow whatever their action plans are to ensure that they are following through on those plans. See if the improvements are happening in our communities, in our cities, our states, and more importantly, right now in our country. We need to attend, as Bethany stated earlier, we need to attend local government hearings. We need to write letters to our politicians, email them, let them know about the things that you disapprove of. When you're doing that, it's important also that you are specific about the things that we disapprove of. And then, as Bethany stated, we need to start running for local offices. That's where it starts. We need to know who's up for re-election, and if they haven't satisfied your needs, our names need to be in the pot for those positions. So we need to get involved, become knowledgeable about the political process, I think as Ronnie had mentioned earlier, so that we then become the catalyst for that change that we want in our society. We need to take the key word that's important for me is we need to take personal ownership for the changes that we expect to happen. So it's vital that we as voters stay informed about issues that affect our families and our communities so that the next election cycle, we all will feel good. We'll be having this conversation, but it's going to be good talk. So that's what should happen now. Our duty does not stop. Our duty continues.
You know, one of the things that I hear you saying, Francis, is this we, right? And so as individuals, we can do things, but collectively, as a group, as a coalition, there's so much power in political processes to organize and be with other people to affect positive change, right? So as individuals, you can be agents of change, but collectively, there's so much power when there are so many people who are advocating and holding our elected officials accountable. So that, I kept hearing that, the we is so important in the political process. So are you planning on running, Francis? Because it almost sounds like you might be running for political office. I don't know.
Got your back. Got your back.
It's not a plan right now, but hey, we never know. We never know. I mean, I grew up with that old saying, and you guys probably heard it also. It takes a village, and that's what this is all about. It definitely, truly does take a village in order for us to invoke some change.
And money.
Absolutely.
You gotta have some money, some funds. So that's really important as well in the political process to begin to raise money. So thank you for that. So what should people know about voting in this election? What do you want to tell people right now? Is it too late to register to vote? Can they still vote early? What can they do now? Anyone want to talk to that?
Well, it is too late to register. Register ended on October 13th. But they can vote now at the registrar's office. They can do early voting. They can do early voting up until October 31st. It opened on September 18th and is open until October 31st. The voting early at the registrar's office on Kemper Street. And they can also do their absentee ballots. They can mail those absentee ballots in.
Okay, so they can do early voting up until October 31st. Is that what I heard?
Yes,
Uh,
Saturday,
and
October 31st is the last day, yes.
okay, and for this particular election, it's too late to register to vote.
Yes, that
Philistine?
ended on the 13th of October.
Okay.
But I would like to add this: the last 2 Saturdays of this month, the registrar's office will be open from 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock. They will be able to vote the entire day, business day, from 9 until 5, the last 2 Saturdays of this month.
Yes.
Okay, and I think
And
Philistine
that's
has.
at the
Yeah,
registrar's office.
I wasn't what I appreciate Ron covering that information, because that's what I was going to say. But we definitely want you to early vote and to make a plan to vote and be an October voter. We have now, like they said, we have now, if you can't go to the polls during the week, that's Saturday, October the 24th, and Saturday, October the 31st, that you can vote. The voters have to be educated too. They need to know their status, and they can check on that if they have a computer. If you have you need to take some form of ID with you to the polls. But if you don't have an ID, you can ask for a complete the identification of affirmation, form, sign it, and proceed to vote. A lot of people, when they get to the polls, they seem confused when they look at the ballot, and they want to vote down the ballot. Now, for me, I looked at the ballot and I filled it out, but when I got ready to get up, I looked at the ballot real close, and I noticed that I had not marked a section there. And so you really need to pay attention to what's on the ballot, because you're voting for the president, the United States Senate, United States House of Representatives. We are in the District 5 and District 6. Campbell County is in Campbell County and Bedford in District, no, Bedford and Lynchburg are in District 6. Campbell and Appomattox are in District 5. There are 2 amendments on the ballot that folks need to be aware of and to vote for them. One is on the redistricting, and the other one is on property exemption for trucks and cars for veterans that are 100%. So they need to be aware of that. And also there are local elections, like in Bedford for town council and the clerk of the court. And in Campbell County, there's elections for town councils. And in Alta Vista, they'll be voting for the mayor, as well as in Brookville, will be voting for the mayor. And you can request absentee ballots. And if you have not received it, then you can take that ballots to the polls. If you did not send it back in to be received 7 days before the election, you may vote at the polls for using a provincial ballot. And you can ask for and if there's a problem, because there are a lot of people that's going to be sort of trying to intimidate the voters outside of the polls as well as inside, because there will be observers and they can question you about whether or not you are eligible to vote. And so if that happens, you can get a provisional ballot and complete the necessary paperwork and cast your vote. Do not leave the polls without voting. If there's a problem, talk to the poll chief. There's a chief and assistant chief at the polls. And if you have a question, you can ask them to come and they can pull you to the side, and you can, they'll work with you, and then you fill out the proper information. And just please do not leave the polls without voting, unless you're at the wrong polling place, because that happens too. If you don't check and know, or if you change and move to a different location, and you go to vote and they said you're not on the poll book there, that you have to go to another one, then leave and go to that polling place and vote. So, and also don't leave the polls without your "I have voted" sticker, because that's something to be proud of, that you did take the time to vote, and that shows everyone around wherever you go that you voted. And take a sample ballot with you, so that if there's time for others and you know they have not voted, that you can share that sample ballot with them so that they can see what's on the ballot and they vote down the poll. Okay. And the other thing I want to share with you is that billboard, that's a billboard that is a picture of the Divine Nine. It's on the corner of Park and 5th Street, and right there at 5th Street Baptist Church. You need to look up because it's sort of high, but that is our project, the Divine Nine and Juneteenth Coalition project, that we put this billboard together to show that we have come together as one to get the word out and the message about voting and early voting and as far as registering. So, and also before we finish up, we're not finished yet, but I just want to, so I won't come back on, is to thank Elaine Duke for all of her support in making the connections with the media, and Stan Webb was responsible for us getting this billboard. So we want to thank them for their cooperation and working with us.
Thank you, Philistine, for that. I wondered, and did you speak to if there is some intimidation at the polls? What people, should they call someone if they feel intimidated? What should they do?
Like I said, the chief is the key person at the poll, and they will take that and they will call the sheriff.
Okay.
Because
so they should get in contact with the chief, whoever the chief is at the particular polling location.
Right. You sort of know who that person is because they're sort of just walking and surveying and observing what's going on. But if something happens and one of us, well, I'm a poll worker, I'm a poll volunteer elections official. And so I worked the polls for many years. So we pretty much see that there might be someone that's having a concern or an issue or observing, that we'll make sure that the chief is aware of that, and then they will handle it.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I appreciate that. If someone needs a ride to the polls, who do they contact? Hold up, Tommy, you got to unmute yourself.
We haven't really covered that one.
I have something.
Oh, you do have Sharon? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Sharon may have she may have the name, but I was going to mention that there is a signature program with of Involved Citizens Unite, and they're going to provide transportation to vote free of service with 2 particular taxi services in the city of Lynchburg. Now, you may have the exact name, Sharon, but we found that out a night that we all came together and did a certification and got educated on how to actually get to register citizens and restore citizens' rights to vote. So if you have that information on the taxi cab, that would be very important. I wanted to share that. I was going to make sure we got it in. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Leslie, like the whole conversation that we've been talking about now is about connections. And so Cheryl Glass and the Lynchburg Voters League, and like I said, other entities, Prayer Faith Temple, met. And like Tommy said, we certified so that we could register people to vote. And we did register some, we got some people's rights back so that they could be restored to vote. But the 2 services that will be free, in addition, buses are free that day on November 3rd.
Okay.
Bus rides are free, but on that day, we have the Go Taxi Service LLC. The owner is Tina Toon, but you'll be calling a different number. And I wished I had that number right now in front of me. It is a 226 number, but I don't have it in front of me. But these are the two groups that have said they would give free service on the day of. Touch of Class, luxury tours, and that's Terrence Spencer. So those 2 folks have volunteered, but if they would call Lynchburg Voters League or Cheryl Glass, they could contact me at 434-329-1443. We could connect them to a free ride to and from the polls. The only exception is there's no space for children. They don't have childcare seats or that kind of thing. But like I said, the buses are free all day on the 3rd, and those 2 services. And I'm sure there are others. There are churches that volunteer. I don't have that information, but Leslie, everybody's pitching in.
Okay.
It's crucial.
It takes a village.
Yes.
It looks like we have a question from the audience. I want to go ahead and see if we can get that in here. So the question is, would someone explain the pieces of legislation being voted on in the event someone does not understand? So can anyone talk about?
One of them, like Philistine said, one of the amendments, and you got to turn your voting paper on the back, turn your ballot over. There's one that talks about gerrymandering. And the other one talks about if a veteran is 100% disabled, would they then be free of property tax? And you either vote yes or no for that. And then the other one is on gerrymandering. And I think that has always been a problem, so that a certain area would get so many, you would have to vote in a certain area. I don't know, somebody else might want to take that one.
That
Gerrymandering?
gerrymandering, at one time it was left up to legislators to do the gerrymandering, but this gives an opportunity for citizens to participate in helping to draw those lines, those districting lines as to where the vote lines start and stop. So this gives citizens an opportunity to participate in that process.
I hope we answered that.
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
And
so
voting yes. Voting yes, you're voting to allow citizens an opportunity to participate in drawing those voting lines, those boundaries.
Thank you for explaining that. I wonder, so we're coming to the end of our time. I wonder if you have any last comments. We can go around if you have, anything you want to say to encourage people to vote. And then I guess we can let Philistine close it out. Philistine, we'll let you close us out, or somebody, Does anyone have anything?
I think
they want
Carlos.
a last word?
I think Carlos had a comment.
Okay, go ahead, Carlos.
Saying that I would like to just say that we're all in this together. It's such an important time. We know that we've got to get out there to vote, regardless, by any means necessary. We have transportation covered. There's no excuse there. You'll have your mask. There's no excuse there. Be prepared for long lines. You know all the routines of what you've been hearing, but whatever you do, please get out and vote.
And vote now, vote early.
That would be best.
Vote early, vote now.
Yeah, October voter.
Yes. Step to the ballot. That's the key.
So
Carlos?
if there's, I know Carlos, I guess Carlos will close us out. So
Yeah,
let me
I
say,
think so.
Okay.
Paula,
so before you go, Carlos, let me just say that if there's somebody out there who is just still not sure about the voting process, register anyway. Register. Well, it's too late for this election if you're not already registered. But there is a governor's election next year, so still you can still register, but not to vote in this election. If you're already registered, please go out and vote. I promise you, your vote will make a difference. You might cause that tie to be the difference. Your one vote.
Paula.
Thank you. I just like to stress, kind of join what everyone's saying. Voting is also important. And reiterate something that Bethany said. It's not just the presidential election, it's the local elections. And these local elections and statewide elections are so important. You get a president in, but the president can't do anything because of the Senate or because of the Congress. That's what you can run into issues like that. You have to vote. You need to cherish your vote. I do understand some people say, well, it doesn't count. It doesn't make a difference, but it does. And it's also important. I just like to reiterate, everyone get out and vote, get out and vote, and get out and vote. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Leslie.
Leslie.
Thank you, everyone. This was a great conversation. I appreciate the work that you're putting in to encourage people to get out to vote. This is the first time I've met some of you all virtually. Hopefully, when the pandemic is over, I'll get to meet you face to face.
Awesome.
So thank you again. Thank you for the people that could not be here who are also part of the coalition, part of the Divine Nine, and the work that you can continue to do to make our community great for everyone. So thank you for tuning in out there. Just a couple of things before we end that I want to say to everyone who is tuning in. I want to remind you again to vote early, like our panelists have said, and encourage you to do. So get out there and vote. You have until October 31st to do that. I want you to also be aware that we have some more great shows coming up. Black Teachers Matter, bringing the past to the present. That's actually going to happen in December. I'm excited to have members of Teachers in the Movement who are going to share about their work to collect historical narratives of teachers, but then the importance of that within and outside of the classroom moving forward. We also have some upcoming shows with local writers, poets, and highlighting other artists in the community. So I hope that you will continue to tune in. Again, if you have any other ideas for shows, we welcome you. This space is for you, the community. You don't have to live in the Burgh or in Central Virginia. But if you have an idea and you're working on something that uplifts the community or is an engaging conversation, let us know. So I just want to thank you again, and be safe and be well. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you later.